Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So it's time for one of my favorite videos of the year, which is my books to read for spooky season. It is finally October. It is my favorite time of year. I am so excited. And I've noticed one of the things that is so lacking in horror are consistent books that focus on Halloween. And I don't actually have too many in my stack that are Halloween specific, but I do this video every single year, so you can go back on my channel and see other books that I have recommended that are a little more Halloween focused. But these books generally give the vibe of autumn, things that people do on Halloween, haunted houses, spooky graveyards, atmosphere, all of the things that I love about this time of year. Now, I debated putting the September House on this list just because it is very clearly about like fall, but I haven't finished reading it yet, so I didn't want to talk about a book that I'm not 100% certain on, and it is set in September, not October, so not very Halloween-y, but definitely spooky season-ish. It's a very interesting haunted house story. But without further ado, let's dive into my 6 more spooky books to read this spooky season. Okay, so first up, The Prettiest Girl in the Grave by Christopher Triana. I adore Christopher Triana. He is definitely on the more extreme side of horror. He is best known for his novel Gone to See the Riverman, which is one of my favorite books. It is so depraved. However, this book is definitely a little bit more tame. It's a little more dark humor, a little easier to digest, but extremely spooky. I'm going to read the back of the book for y'all. From the author of international horror sensation Gone to See the Riverman comes a new tale of terror that will drag you to the darkest corners of the soul. Some girls are fearful, others are brave. One girl's a princess, the next one a slave. But all girls are equal when they're down in this cave. Until just one is left standing, the prettiest girl in the grave. It's only supposed to be a game. When Bella, Celeste, and Rose meet with new friends at a graveyard in the woods, they soon realize they're unprepared for what's planned. At 20, Aubrey is older than the high schoolers, and she knows of a secret game that's been played by local girls for decades. It starts with personal questions, but quickly moves on to a test of courage as Aubrey guides them into an underground crypt. But even Aubrey doesn't know what they're really getting into. Bella's mother, Holly, may be the only one who does. As a teen, Holly and her friends also played the game, and Holly barely survived. When she discovers her daughter has gone to the graveyard, she fears Bella will get lost in the mysterious catacombs just as she had, and face the same sinister forces. As the girls search for a way out, Holly must return to the dreadful crypt she swore she'd never come back to, and finally face her own dark secrets. So while this book doesn't necessarily focus on Halloween, it is set in a graveyard, set in a crypt. It's about teenagers sneaking about in places they shouldn't be, and it is just so spooky, and I just fell in love with the atmosphere of it. This novel plays upon each individual character's fears, so you really get a lot of really good scares in here, and pays a lot of tribute as well to Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher, which I just absolutely loved. So if you are looking for something that's going to be spooky, eerie, kind of, I don't want to say lighthearted and fun because it's not, but there is this element of dark humor to this book that really, really lightens the kind of the seriousness of it that I really enjoyed. But I just had so much fun with it. I love kind of I don't want to say caricatures of the girls, but I love the cliche goth girl and the kind of cliche I want to be a witch girl. Like, it's just such a personality that you definitely see in teenagers and young adults, and it's so fun and just, again, creepy, atmospheric, and just really sets the tone, I feel like, for spooky season. Like, if this was a movie, this is a movie I would like curl up and watch every single October. It's just bizarre, unique, original, and again, it's set in a graveyard, and I don't know about you guys, but my parents used to always take me to a graveyard every single Halloween. So when I think of graveyards and hanging out in them, I always, always, always think Halloween. I also always go to the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery every single year before I go to the Great Jack-o'-lantern Blaze up in Hudson Valley, which I've already done this year because we gotta start October as early as possible. So yeah, graveyards I just really, really associate with Halloween. Alright, next up. And I debated putting this one in here, but it did win over. My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. I'm going to read the inside flap very quickly, though I imagine most people on this channel already know what this book is about. You won't find a more hardcore 80s slasher film fan than high school senior Jade Daniels. And you won't find a place less supportive of girls who wear torn t-shirts and too much eyeliner than Proof Rock, nestled 80,000 feet up a mountain in Idaho alongside Indian Lake, home to both Camp Blood, site of a massacre of 50 years ago, and, as of this summer, Terra Nova, a second home celebrity Camelot being carved out of a national forest. That's not the only thing that's getting carved up, though. This, Jade knows, is the start of a slasher. But what kind? Who's wearing the mask? Jade's got an encyclopedic recall of every horror movie on the shelf, but will that help her survive? Can she get a final girl trained enough to stop all of this from happening? Does she even want to? Isn't a slasher exactly what her hometown deserves? This new novel by the New York Times bestselling author of The Only Good Indian, Stephen Graham Jones, called One of Our Most Talented Living Writers by Tommy Orange, explores the changing landscape of the West through his distinct voice of sharp humor and prophetic violence. Go up the mountain to Proof Rock. See if you've got what it takes. See if your heart, too, might be a chainsaw. So even though this novel is set in the summer, the reason I wanted to include it is because it has so many references and essays, kind of humorous essays, about the history of slasher films and the setting up of slashers. And another thing that I think of when I think of Halloween are always like the iconic 70s and 80s slashers like Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think those are so pivotal to the holiday and spooky season that not including a book that really, really plays up a love letter to that genre would be a disservice. Now, I debated putting Final Girl Support Group in by Grady Hendrix because that is a little bit more like nail on the head when it comes to talking about slashers. Because it just references so many for so long throughout the entire novel versus just these kind of snippets that come into play. But I don't love that book. I'm not a fan of that book, but I love this book. I really, really love this book. And I am so not a Stephen Graham Jones fan, and I couldn't believe how much I adored this because it is just such a love letter to the genre that I felt that if you are somebody who is maybe looking for something a little more meta to read for spooky season, this is definitely the one that is self-aware of what it is versus some of the other books in this list that are just going to be kind of about the vibes and atmosphere. Okay, next up. This is the one I'm the most excited about because this one really is just Halloween. This is All Hallows by Christopher Golden. I spoke about this in a review and my wrap-up on when I included this book, but this book reminds me so much of Trick or Treat. I adored this. I am so bummed that this came out in like January. Why wasn't this released in like September, October? And look at the spooky face. Oh, this book is just so fun, so creepy, so perfectly Halloween. It is set on Halloween night. Many of our main characters are trick-or-treaters. It is awesome. There is a haunted forest, like a Field of Screams type of thing where like people come and walk through sets of props. It is so cool. Okay, I'm gonna read the inside flap. It's Halloween night, 1984, in Coventry, Massachusetts, and two families are unraveling. Up and down the street, secrets are being revealed, and all the while, mixed in with the trick-or-treaters of all ages, 4 children who do not belong are walking door to door, merging with the kids of Parmenter Road. Children in vintage costumes with faded, eerie makeup. They seem terrified, and they beg the neighborhood kids to hide them away, to keep them safe from the cunning man. There's a small clearing in the woods now that's never been there before, and a blackthorn tree that doesn't belong at all. These odd children claim that the cunning man is coming for them, and they want the local kids to protect them. But with families falling apart and the neighborhood splintered by bitterness, who will save the children of Parmenter Road? All Hallows, the one night where everything is a mask. Ah, guys, it's so much fun. And it's told through the different perspectives of various different characters. So you do kind of get that kind of anthology feel because you are following certain characters through different storylines and everything is woven in through the same town. So while it's not going to be exactly like Trick or Treat where we focus on one storyline at a time, everything is kind of woven throughout, you get such a good, almost anthology vibe of all the linked up stories. And everything comes together so well, and it is so pivotal to like Halloween night of going to like parties and teenagers like raging in the woods and all of the trick-or-treaters and people being cliquey about whose costumes work with what and what group they go trick-or-treating and are they old enough to be trick-or-treating and setting up the front yard with your family to scare people and giving out candy. It is just everything that I remember throughout my life of partaking in on Halloween. And I love it. It is so cool. I love that trick-or-treaters are such a big part of this story, and I really wish we had more books that just focused on Halloween night. So definitely, that's probably my #1 recommendation for spooky season on this whole list. All Hallows by Christopher Golden. It's so much fun. It is just so much fun. Okay, next up, and I just did a review on this, so if you haven't watched that, definitely check that out. But The Nightmare Man by J.H. Markert, and as I said in my review, this was an absolute just cover buy. I just thought it looked spooky and autumnal, and like Scarecrow in the cornfield, so I bought it, and I had a lot of fun with it. Now, the reason this is on this list is because the first half of this book just screams spooky season to me. The first half of this book is primarily uncovering crime scenes set around like barns and cornfields in a small town. It feels very like Harvest, if that makes sense. And then the second half of the book kind of flips to like spooky haunted mansion, haunted library kind of thing. There's definitely a big like division in tone from the first half of the book to the second half, but to me they both really hit the nail on the head for like autumn vibes, harvest season, haunted house. And I really, really liked that. Now, it is kind of disguised as a mystery thriller, but it is a supernatural story. But I'm going to read the inside for y'all. Blackwood Mansion looms, surrounded by nightmare pines, atop the hill over the small town of New Haven. Ben Bookman, best-selling novelist and heir to the Blackwood estate, spent a weekend at the ancestral home to finish writing his latest horror novel, The Scarecrow. Now, on the eve of the book's release, the terrible story within begins to unfold in real life. Detective Mills arrives at the scene of a gruesome murder, a family butchered and bundled inside cocoons, stitched from corn husks and hung from the rafters of a barn, eerily mirroring the opening of Bookman's latest novel. When another family is killed in a similar manner, Mills, along with his daughter, rookie detective Samantha Blue, is determined to find the link to the book and the killer before the story reaches its chilling climax. As the series of Scarecrow crimes continues to mirror the book, Ben quickly becomes the prime suspect. He can't remember much from the night he finished writing the novel, but he knows he wrote it in the atrium, his grandfather's forbidden room full of numbered books. Thousands of books. Books without words. As Ben digs deep into Blackwood's history, he learns he may have triggered a release of something trapped long ago. And it won't stop with the horrors buried within the pages of his book. Another thing that I really loved about this book is I find scarecrows really scary. I don't think I've ever talked about this on my channel, but I have a huge, I have like a dream demon that is a scarecrow. So I've had it like almost my whole life. So this book really, really spoke to me because not only are dreams very important to this novel, obviously it's called The Nightmare Man, but scarecrows play such a pivotal part in the first half, and I found this so eerie. And I just had a lot of fun with this novel. It's definitely something I've never read anything like this book before. It's very unique. It's very kind of, multiple ideas thrown together to come to one cohesive story, but in the end it really worked. So I was very, very pleased with this book, and I definitely think it's a great one for spooky season. Okay, so this is another book I debated putting on this list, but I do think it deserves to be here. And this is Pet Sematary by Stephen King, arguably one of his more famous works. This is not my favorite book by Stephen King. I read it when I was 21, and I definitely think I need to reread it, because I think a lot of the horror in this novel went over my head when I read it so young. And I did sign up for the Down the Rabbit Hole book box featuring this. So that's their Stephen King Halloween box this year. I'm very excited about it. But I love the setting of Pet Sematary. I've always, always loved the setting of Pet Sematary. I've seen all of the main films. And I'm very excited for the upcoming Paramount Plus series. I'm actually going to go and resubscribe to Paramount Plus to be able to watch it, because they're going to be telling a story that is kind of hidden within the pages of this book, and never really focused on much in the actual film adaptation, so I'm very excited about that. Let me read the back of the book for you. When the Creeds move into a beautiful old house in rural Maine, it all seems too good to be true. Physician father, beautiful wife, charming little daughter, adorable infant son, and now an idyllic home. As a family, they've got it all, right down to the friendly cat. But the nearby woods hide a blood-chilling truth, more terrifying than death itself, and hideously more powerful. So if you guys haven't read Pet Sematary, or you're unfamiliar with Pet Sematary, this is the story about sometimes dead is better, right? That's the big quote for this. This is the story about what would you do if you lost a pet, or say something more, and you could resurrect it from the dead. But what if there was a catch to that? What if they didn't always come back the same? So yes, there is absolutely tragically animal death in this book. I think this is one of those few books where, in my personal opinion, obviously the death of an animal really pushes forward this narrative. It's done very tastefully, it's done very well, and it's very scary. And I remember loving the vast majority of this book until the very end. And there's some really, really creepy scenes. But one of the things that I really like is, obviously with Stephen King, it's set in Maine. This book being set in like the woods in Maine, and I believe it is set in early fall, just has a really great atmospheric setting, constantly going to these burial grounds in the woods. Very, very spooky season, very like midtown or small town horror vibes. This book is one of the King classics for a reason, and I will definitely be rereading this soon. I really need to, because I think it was definitely a book that I read a little too young to understand all of the horrors that are actually in this novel. Because again, this is a novel that really focuses on familial horror, family horror, which is something I've been talking a lot about on my channel. In fact, I might do a whole video on that, because this is an interesting genre. And I think when done well, it is extremely terrifying, unsettling, and disturbing. So definitely give this a read if you haven't yet. Okay, and last but certainly not least is Legacy Witches by Cass K. I received this in a recent Twisted Retreat box. It is so beautiful. I love their special editions. They're so gorgeous. And I thought this book would be perfect for spooky season, primarily because it is about witches, and it is set in Salem, and they do their best to, even though like they fictionalize Salem and like the people in Salem and the kind of different types of witches and powerful people there, it still is so true to Salem. And I know that like Salem's the Halloween capital of the world. A book set in Salem, about the witches in Salem, tied to the historical past of Salem. It's just spooky season on spooky season on spooky season. This book was so fun, and I really, when I first read the premise, thought it was going to be kind of like corny and YA and CW vibes, and it's got a little bit of that, but it was definitely more serious than I thought it was going to be, and I had so much fun with it that I went out and bought the sequel to it. Okay, let's read the inside flat. Seeing ghosts and coming from a long line of murderous witches has made life less than sunshine and rainbows for Vianna Roots. When she inherits the family's haunted house, she decides flipping the rundown dump for cash is the smartest move. But the ghosts that haunt her have a different plan. After encountering the spirit of a missing local witch, Vianna finds herself drawn into the mystery of who murdered the girl, and her meddling draws the attention of the oldest coven in Salem. When they make an offer on the house, Vianna hesitates. Cutting ties with the demon who possesses her home, and the transgender outcast witch who may just be the best friend she never knew she wanted, isn't so simple. The tainted legacy of the witches before her was why she ran 10 years ago, but this time Vianna is ready to prove that the past doesn't define her. So what I love is inside the book they have this map of Salem, and it is so accurate to what Salem actually looks like. And now they've changed a couple things to like fit the story, but like the witch house, the witch dungeon, the Peabody Essex Museum, the House of the Seven Gables, Derby Wharf, all of these are real places. The Salem Common, right here is the hotel that I always stay at. So I was just so thrilled when I saw this, because I love Salem. I try and go to Salem at least once a year, if not every other year. And this vibe just so perfectly captured the essence of that magical town. You can tell that Cass K has been to Salem many times. And so I was thrilled when I read this, because I just didn't know that I needed a book that fully captured Salem the way that this does. And yes, I know Hocus Pocus was like filmed there, but this book just really captures the vibe of Salem in real life much better than any other fictional adaptation I have seen. So absolutely give this a chance if you are interested in Salem and witches and Halloweeny spooky towns. Anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this list. As always, I post, or at least I'm trying to post, every Monday and Thursday. I am going away for 3 weeks, so a lot of these videos are going to be pre-filmed and pre-uploaded. But if you enjoyed this channel, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you all in the next one. Mwah! Bye.